What cringy moment in your life still keeps you up at night when you randomly remember it? I was either in 1st or 2nd grade when this happened. Anyway, our PE teacher was testing us by making us do sit-ups. We were grouped in pairs and when it was my turn my partner was holding my ankles and foot. I did it, but every time I did it I would fart, and it wasn't one of those silent farts. No, it made sound, but stupid me didn't want to stop and neither did the farts. The day I asked my mum and dad for a vibrator for my 12th birthday, I thought that's what those cuddly toys had zoomed around when you pulled the string were called. So I was at Noah's Ark in WA and at the time was in contact with my dad. At the time he was bald, but he had hair prior. I wasn't used to this change and accidentally walked up to a complete stranger, also bald, slapped him full force on the head, then kissed it better. I was like 5 at the time. I look to the right and see my dad waving at me from 3 chairs down. The guy's face still haunts me to this day. I love this. My dad would have never let me live this down. When I was 15 I was trying to get a weekend job in a pet store. The owner asked me if I was flexible. My reply was yes. Of course, I've done yoga for years. It's been 13 years and I still think about it. My brain's way of embarrassing me at random moments. Hey, remember that time you were a total idiot? I remember interviewing at a fruit stall on my local high street. I turned up in a full suit, and when asked why I wanted to apply the only thing I could think of was I like how the apples smell, and then we both sat in silence for a few moments until he asked me to leave and said he'd be in touch. Your comment just brought that 11-year-old memory back. Kindergarten, winter time, come in from recess, take off toque, mitts, coat, snow boots, snow pants, pants. It's my very first school memory, and plays in full HD, with surround sound. Over 20 years ago, but still makes me cringe like crazy. Spanish class, high school. It's beginner Spanish, so we're going over adjectives. We're adding sentences from the book out loud. One of the sentences says something like Maria es gorda y guapa. Maria is fat and pretty. A chorus of immature 15-year-old giggles commences after that. I stay out of it because I'm fat. The teacher stops us and says the two are not mutually exclusive, to which the guy next to me loudly mumbles, "Yes it is." The teacher gets livid. She spends about the next 5 minutes lecturing us on how saying such a thing could cause someone to commit suicide and how we all need to grow up. At the end, she points right at me, thinking I'm the one who said it, and says, "And you're really not one to talk." Thunderous, roaring laughter from the whole class. I never wanted to just disappear more than at that moment. I can still feel a pain in my chest when I think back to it. All this makes me sad. In the 1st grade I went to a new friend's house. He was kind of the cool rich kid. Really nice though. Anyways, went swimming and chilled in the hot tub after. Something about the bubbles and heat loosened the apparent toxic sludge that had formed in my bowels unbeknownst to me. I leaped out of the hot tub and ran in the house and down the hallway to the bathroom. Oh god, the carpet was so new and white like the virgin snow, dotted with black fesses. I was wearing swim trunks. There was no barrier to trap the waste, so it ran down my leg and onto the fresh, white carpet. I never forgot about that and I still see the guy around town every once in a while. I avoid him in the grocery store and I'm 24. Hey, this guy crap on my rug. I was an extremely unattractive teen. Bad overbite, bad hair, huge glasses, baby fat. Not a good look for a 13-year-old girl. Anyhow, our school had a poetry contest where people stood up and read their favorite poems. I couldn't find a poem I like, so I wrote one about falling in love with a beautiful boy. God help me, I can't even remember the beginning. The world is filled with beautiful sounds. The rain falling, leaves falling to the ground. Then comes love, the beautiful joy. The moment you meet that wonderful boy. It's been almost 40 years. I can't remember where I put my car keys last night, but I can remember the damned poem that I read out loud while my classmates laughed at me. That poem sounds really sweet. Kids are just rude in general. It had nothing to do with you, and everything to do with the age everyone was, and the social environment of everyone else laughing because the coolest kid in class started laughing. In that moment, you had the biggest cajones out of all your peers. Cheers to you. I made the mistake in middle school to wear white jeans to school. Every one of my friends kept laughing and whispering behind my back the entire day. It wasn't until my last class a girl I sat with was kind enough to tell me I had period blood on my pants and gave me her hoodie to tie around my waist. I had given presentations in 3 classes that day, so everyone in my classes knew I was on my period. Luckily it was a lighter flow day and it wasn't like a murder scene. Mom let me stay home from school for the remainder of my period and I lost all my friends in the process because they were buttholes. But now I'm best friends with the girl who gave me her hoodie, so I've got that going for me. Update. I will be pouring one out for the homies tonight in memory of all the ruined pants out there that never stood a chance in the fight against early womanhood. Solidarity sisters. Ugh. Cocky pants and same exact story. Only difference is my teachers snickered and giggled every time it'd turn around. Frick middle school. I was like 6 and in this real fancy hotel playing with some other kids my age, including this one girl that was really cute, and I had one of those kid crushes. You know the ones. When it was time to go, my parents called me over and instead of saying goodbye to the girl like a normal human being, I grabbed her by the waist and whispered in her ear, "Hasta la vista baby," and ran to my parents. That's some pimp crap. In 2nd grade during bathroom break, I had to go pee but all the stalls were shut, so I looked inside the crack of a stall and this popular girl in my class was on the toilet. And I said hi, and when she came out the stall she told me that I can't just look at her while she's using the bathroom. Now that I reflect on that, I was creepy AF. I did that but tried to climb the stall. I thought it was stuck. At the age of 7 I went to kiss my 4-year-old sister goodnight and tried to give her a French kiss by putting my tongue into her mouth. I had seen it on TV. Dad pulled me away and my sister cried. We have not mentioned it, ever. I did that, but to my mom. I went to an audition for a Renaissance fair. I didn't even want to, but my mom pressured me. She told me that you had to be in costume. The audition was at a country club. I showed up in full freaking cheap costume and couldn't find the audition. I walked around the entire country club looking for the audition, literally with people laughing at me. I got there and they were trying so hard not to laugh at me. They told me to fill out some paper in the other room and the guy gave me a really nice pen. He specifically told me not to lose the pen because it was expensive. I pieced the frick out with the guy's pen. So, in some ways that day, I won. The ending is really good. The time I worked in retail, and I was looking for an empty dressing room to put a customer in. I walked up to the door, knock on it, no answer. So, I unlock the door and open it to reveal a man with his pants halfway down. Clearly he is trying them on and I've just interrupted him. We both just stare at each other for a second and I say, "They look great," and I abruptly closed the door. Pro save TBH LOL. I was 13. I was teaching my 50-year-old large-breasted full-bodied home ec teacher to play chess. I kept staring at her cleavage while talking to her. In my defense, I had recently read that it is normal for men to look at women's breasts. Clearly I mistook looking for staring. I thought it was normal at the time, but looking back I remember her trying to get me to look at her face instead of what I was obviously concentrated on. I makes me cringe 9 years later. I hope I never see that woman again. And now you're French president. Not so bad. When I was 9, my friend and I knocked at our 16-year-old neighbor's house to see if we could play his NES. My friend said that we didn't want to make it too obvious, so we should knock and ask if he wanted to play Game Boy with us. We all had Gamma Boys at the time, so we knock on the door and my friend goes, "Hey, we were wondering if you'd like to play Game Boy with us." I, thinking this was far too subtle, chimed in with, or as I like to call them, Nintendo devices. They both stared at me for a second and my friend made a WTF face at me. Then the older dude laughed and asked if we'd like to play his NES. I had one go on Mario and was killed by that first freaking Goomba. I wasn't really paying attention as I was too busy thinking about how much of a dong I'd made of myself. To this day, I can't play the first level of Mario without cringing. At least your neighbor was nice about it. In high school I crushed all over this girl who was cute, smart and very nice. She was always easy to approach and talk to, and over 2 years I never acted on my liking of her. I sort of just assumed, like in movies and TV shows, that it'd just take one action to make her go wow and she'd want to go out with me. Boy was I wrong. On Valentine's Day I sent her a rose and a poem I wrote. I thought it was a great idea to spell out my name through the start of each line. She figured it out immediately, and told a lot of people about my confession of love. I only recently found out that apparently some of her friends were poking fun of her for it too. It made the next few years of my life very awkward around her, and even during my first year of university, we'd catch the train and bus in due to the same starting times, and I always felt so reserved talking to her. I was like 7 years old and out trick-or-treating. I went up a house and a girl, only slightly older than I was, came to the door with 2 bags of chips. One a package of Lay's potato chips, the other a bag of Hawkins cheesies. She tossed the bag of chip into my bag and held the cheesy bag. I assumed both were for me and she was teasing me. So I held my bag out and shaked it a couple times and she's like, "That's it. That's all you're getting." Then she took a cheesy out of the bag and ate it and I slinked away. That was like 25 years ago and I still think of that moment and cringe. Similar things have happened to me and I totally understand the mortification. 13 years old. Sports day at our secondary school UK. Secondary was ages 11 to 16 followed by 6th form ages 16-18. Everyone in the class had to participate by joining one of the events. I joined one of the swimming events. My mum packed my sports bag and the swimming costume she put in tied at the neck and was about 2 sizes too small. I had put on weight and was starting to develop boobs. No choice. Had to participate. I'm not that great a swimmer so predictably I came in last. Quite a long way last. I remember feeling so embarrassed swimming the last lap of the pool basically on my own. All girls of the year were sat on one side of the pool, all boys on the other. Of course the side you had to get out at was facing all the boys. As I was getting out of the pool I noticed the swimming teacher staring at me and scowling. I looked down and my swimming costume had come undone and fallen off at the top. All the boys in my year got an eye view. Remembering it still makes me cringe with embarrassment and it was 33 years ago. TLDR. Flashed my newly developing boobs at all the boys in my year getting out of the swimming pool. If it makes you feel better, my poor wife wasn't allowed to shave her pubes when she was like 13. No idea how anyone would know, and may have had a few slip out while swimming. 15 years old virgin. Attractive older girl liked me. She had a bit of a reputation. Her friend was seeing one of my friends. A double date was set. The night before 4 of us lads camped out for the night. Mates spent the night telling me that I was going to lose my virginity tomorrow. That she was very experienced. That I better perform well. etc etc. Leaving me frankly terrified by the next morning. So I was going to cancel, but one of my friends helpfully made the brilliant suggestion of a bit of Dutch courage to give me a little confidence. So I drank a bottle of Malibu. The rest's a bit of a blur, but I do vaguely remember walking around with my dong hanging out expecting her to be overcome with passion. Needless to say I never got anywhere with her. Embarrassingly she still lives near me and I've bumped into her a few times whilst shopping with my family. The way you say 15-year-old virgin makes me slightly self-conscious about being a 21-year-old virgin. I was taking a dump at work and forgot to lock the bathroom door and the CEO of the company walks in while I'm wiping my butt checking if there's any more brown stuff on the toilet paper. To make it worse I made eye contact with him and said, "Sorry, I guess I forgot to lock the door." He just looked at me with disgust and closed the door without saying anything. Way to assert dominance. Me and my best mate were on a bus going into town. There were no seats free for my friend so he stood up next to me while I sat. Anyway, he hadn't taken a hold of the rail as the bus set off and the bus really accelerated quite hard. My friend flew across the bus and fell into the lap of a 70-plus-year-old man. The bus kept accelerating and my friend just couldn't move. The way the bus was accelerating it just forced him harder into his lap. He was probably in that poor man's lap for at least 4 full seconds. Now that doesn't sound very long, but actually count it out. 4 seconds is a long time to be sat in the lap of a random old man. I imagine it was very cringy for him. I cracked up so hard that I basically wet myself. I still remind him about it. It was literally the funniest thing I've ever seen. He couldn't get up. That's freaking hilarious. I took a dong pic but forgot about it. It was in my photo gallery on my phone. One day, my mom wanted to borrow my phone to take pictures of flowers in the garden. She saw my dong pic, gave me a dirty look and made me delete it. Even worse, she probably thought it was somebody else. When I was like 5 or 6, I took part in a kiddie race at the community games. I was off in my own little world as we lined up to run. There was a signal to go, and once I heard it I just took off running. Ran the whole race without anyone even coming near me. I thought I was so cool. Couldn't understand why nobody clapped or cheered for me. Even the people giving out prizes weren't clapping. Needless to say, I was both confused and indignant. Turns out they were just doing a test signal so all the kids would know when to go. I took off like Usain Bolt and claimed a stunning victory before the race even started. The other kids were pee and I experienced my first taste of crippling embarrassment. A great day had by all. One time at work, I was in the bathroom during lunch. Me and these other girls were talking about schedule changes by the sinks. This other girl that was in the stall had asked some question about the conversation, and I turned around, made eye contact with her through the crack of the stall door, saw her sitting on the toilet with her pants down, as people normally do in the bathroom, and answered her question. I immediately turned around and realized how awkward that was. I didn't mean to. I guess I'm just used to looking at people when I talk to them. Well, I mean, she did ask you a question after all while she was on the toilet. There was a girl in my marine class I wanted to impress, so my professor asked how I knew about the curl canth. In order to show the girl I'm extra confident and passionate, I said word from word Animal Crossing. No one in that class knew what Animal Crossing was and I had to awkwardly mumble that it's a video game for like 5 minutes that felt like 5 hours. I got what a loser glances from half the class. Lucky for me, the girl thought it was cute and endearing. As soon as I glanced at this and saw Coelcanth, I knew this had to be about Animal Crossing. Definitely not a loser. Animal Crossing is great. I pretty much wouldn't know anything about fish if it weren't thanks to that game. My husband, boyfriend at the time, and I were going to stay at his sister's house for a couple nights while they were out of town. Her husband's uncle lives there too, but he was out of town for the weekend. Well, we had sex in the shower, and weren't particularly quiet, since the house was empty, and in the bedroom as well. Next morning, discover uncle was home the whole time. His room also happens to share a wall with the bathroom. Hehehe. Once when I was playing football, they told me do the count off at the end where I would have to say 1, 2, 3 and then everyone would say the team name. 7th grade me didn't understand this at the time and I just kind of sat there in the middle of the huddle for 15 seconds until one of the older players did it for me. Didn't realize until my dad told me what I did. I felt so stupid, lol. I once watched a video on YouTube. It was called Eating Loud in the Library, or something like that. Basically a bunch of guys eating stuff as loud as they could to get some funny reactions from the crowd. I thought it was pretty funny. That same afternoon I got pretty drunk, and I decided to do something similar when visiting some of my best friends. So I bought a bunch of lettuce and some whipped cream at the store and headed over to their place. Once I arrived and sat down, I thought it would be the perfect time to make my move and be funny. I opened my backpack and took out the lettuce, sprayed it with whipped cream and just started munching on it like a maniac. No one laughed and they all kind of ignored me for the rest of the day. I think this is my favorite one. That's freaking hilarious. Super awkward. Sophomore high school, me got a really pretty girl a flower on Valentine's Day and gave it to her in front of her whole math class. It was just a crush, and I cringed so hard thinking about it. Kinda proud of myself for doing it, but man, boners, they can't take all the sense out of a boy. The power of boners. I could spin you a yarn. When I was in elementary school, probably grade 2, the school said we could wear our Halloween costumes to school. But apparently they changed their mind and called all the parents. Well, my family never got the memo and I showed up as a freaking fairy princess. Only person in costume. FML. Luckily I didn't live too far from school and they let me walk home and change, and then come back. Stranger Things IRL. When I was in 4th grade, my neighbor had a Super Nintendo and I did not. I would go over there and play Mario Kart and F-Zero with him. One day, I knocked on his door and his older sister, who was probably in 7th grade, answered. I asked if I could play Nintendo with Chris, and she said that her mom had taken Chris to a dentist's appointment or something. She must have expected me to walk home, but instead I said oh, that's fine, and walked into the house, plopped myself in front of their TV, and started playing video games. Eventually the mother got home and walked me back to my house, where my mom proceeded to explain how insane it was that I welcomed myself into someone's house with no adult and no friend there. I still look back and cringe over how dumb I was, but I also look back and wonder if that incident is the reason my parents bought me an N64 as soon as it came out. TBH, where I grew up that was pretty normal. When a teacher accused me of plagiarism when I accidentally turned in my notes for an essay instead of the actual essay, that still pushes my stomach into my throat. That's freaking awful. In middle school I had bought a really lovely Gothic Lolita ensemble for an upcoming anime convention. For those unfamiliar with Lolita, just think super frilly human doll clothes. It also has nothing to do with the Nabokov book. It was so lovely and I was so excited about it that I, for some reason, thought it would be a good idea to wear it to school. The red, tear-streaked faces of the girls who were laughing so hard at me that they couldn't breathe haunts me in a way nothing else does. Most people laughed or were so embarrassed for me that they wouldn't look me in the eyes. I realized my mistake immediately. Luckily I had a computer class second period and emailed my mom to pick me up, which she did right away as she had been worrying about me. I was very adamant about wearing the dress despite her well-intentioned warnings. This all happened on a Friday, so by Monday most people had forgotten and I left so early in the day a lot of kids hadn't even seen me. Those girls' faces though, I've lost sleep over them. It was a rude awakening too, because the shame I felt for wearing something I had previously been so excited about showed me that I wasn't as brave as I previously thought I was. Girl in 10th grade asks me to movie for Friday night. Totally perpetually clueless male friend of mine calls me up Friday night and wants to hang. Can I come with you guys? Sure. I sucked at saying no back then. I'm so sorry 10th grade girl that obviously liked me back then. I liked you too. On my way to work walked for 15 minutes with a torn trouser. When I saw my trousers I realized my undies was completely visible from the back. The time I pointed to my new boss's belly and said congratulations with a huge smile on my face. Turned out she was fat, not pregnant. Dude, never ever assume a woman's pregnant. She could be having a baby in front of you and you still shouldn't assume she was pregnant. I know this will get buried so I don't feel too bad about saying it. When I was 13 we traveled to Germany with my class. When we came back home, we were supposed to have a video to remember it, sort of a slideshow with the names of the locations we visited, photos of the group, etc. But the guy who was in charge of IT in my school was too lazy to do it, so I decided to take matter into my own hands. I felt like a total pro because I knew how to use Windows Movie Maker and had edited a few terrible, cringy AMVs before. So I edited a video with some clips from Germany, some pictures of the class, and obviously the background music was from Fall Out Boy and some other completely out of context rock group. I basically made an AMV of our class trip. I sent it to the teacher because 13-year-old me was very proud of the masterpiece she created, and our teacher then showed it to the whole class with the comment, well, it's better than nothing. Now, when I listen to the songs I put in this video I instantly remember that moment and I feel like a complete idiot. I met my celebrity crush and had the chance to have a full-on 20-minute conversation with the guy. I used that 20 minutes to be a cringy fangirl, instead of, you know, having a genuine conversation. To this day I'm embarrassed, but I can't really blame myself too much. For a winter play in the 5th grade, I offered to do the worm across the stage during the rock solo portion of the song because the teacher asked for people who can dance. She let me. Second performance I knocked over props. Third performance I kicked a kid in the mouth who was pretending to do a recorder solo whilst trying to do the worm. I got laughed at a lot. My neighbors went to both performances. When I got my first girlfriend I randomly texted her that I knew why I wasn't as frisky as I used to be, and it was because I had stopped lifting weights, which made my testosterone go down. She was like, so I tried to turn it into a health lesson, but I couldn't salvage an already embarrassing moment. I'm late to the party, but here we go anyways. When I was an undergrad, I would pay my tuition by working at a steel tubing mill over the summers. Because of this, I had to have physicals every year before I started working. I was nervous already because I was told they might have to check for a hernia, and I knew what that would entail. I'm not in the habit of showing other grown men my junk. I go in for the physical, and at one point the doctor hands me a gown and tells me to take my clothes off and get in the gown. For some reason that still haunts me to this day. I took that as, get completely naked and put on the gown. So, that's what I did. The doctor comes in and tells me to get up and do some stretches so he can check out my mobility. As I'm stretching, he says, "Whoa, wait a second. Are you naked?" I muttered a yes, and he abruptly left the room. I put my clothes back on and the nurse informed me my physical was over and that I could leave. In my defense, the doctor should have been more clear about what he meant by take your clothes off. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.